everyone. I'm going to be refuting the claim, India is slow to develop economically due to its large population. My opponent's secondary claims were the following. The population growth places stress on the natural resources. 2, capital formation is difficult. 3, there is a problem of investment. 4, shortage of food grains hampers the growth of the economy. My response to her secondary claim number 1 was the population growth places stress on the natural resources is that she states a quote from economist Ranko Malvanik, and in which he states, begin quote, "The question is simple, the answer is not," end quote. The source is reliable, but the evidence is not relevant. The context of the quote is simple and lacks statistics or substance to the claim that population growth is placing stress on India's resources. This evidence is not sufficient. My counterclaim to her secondary claim number 1 is, according to Investigating the Relationship Between Population and Economic Growth, authors Sujanta Sethi and Haryar Sahu of the Indian Journal of Economics and Business, India has become one of the world's fastest growing economies, primarily due to the rise in population growth. According to this article, the large population in India has positive effects, not only immediately, but in the long run as well. My response to secondary claim number 2 is, my speaker claims that capital formation is difficult, more specifically, quote, "the birth rate is high and the expectancy of life is high," end quote, which according to Rajan Sarma and Lavananda Chowdhury, authors of A New Model for Estimating District Life Expectancy at Birth in India, only 16 major states in India provide accurate and direct information on life expectancy, quote, "due to incomplete death registration," quote. What is true for 16 economies is not true for all 29 economies in India. My response to secondary claim number 3 is, my speaker's third secondary claim is that there is a problem of investment in India that is slowing economic growth. I oppose with my findings from venture economic data, in which it stated that during the period of 1990 and 1999, India's ranking was 25 out of 64 countries, whereas over the 2000s period, they are now 13 out of 90 countries, and the funds raised $16,685.5 million for investments in India. The speaker's claim is that there is a problem of investment requirement, and it cannot be justified because of statistics suggesting there is no problem with their investments in the first place. Last but not least, my response to her secondary claim number 2 is the speaker's claim is that the shortage of food grains hampers in the economic development. Following the speaker's final secondary claim, they proceeded to say, quote, "India ranks 98 within 214 million people going hungry. With this productivity will decrease, it is inevitable," end quote. I refute that claim because it is not a fact that shortage of food grains is interdependent of productivity, including all industries of India. According to Samukhe Majumdar, author of article and study Private Enterprise Growth and Human Capital Productivity in India, states that growth in private firms and decrease in government ownership is a significant increase in capital productivity, including all industries of India. Needless to say, it is not inevitable that productivity will decrease because of the shortage of food grains, because there are independent factors that are involved as well. This concludes my refutation.
Okay, the structure's laid out pretty clearly. On the first point, you start kind of picking at the evidence and its lack of specifics, which I think is a reasonable press to make. Maybe the more effective response, though, is the counterclaim that you have that suggests that there are economic factors here that are producing the exact opposite result. And I thought that when you put them in contrast to one another, you say their evidence is ambiguous, my evidence is very specific, their evidence suggests a conclusion, mine offers the direct opposite conclusion. I think you could do a little bit more of that contrasting thing when you're presenting the argument. On the remaining points, it's mostly counterclaims that you're presenting with evidence reaching different conclusions. I think you did a pretty good job on that. The number 2 point is mostly a criticism of the research that the advocate's using, suggesting that they have limited resources. Only 16 states have accurate information. There are almost twice as many of those. So half the country, in essence, is not being represented accurately with the statistical information. That's a good press. I don't know that it shows that the opposite is true, but it does suggest that maybe we can't reach any conclusions without additional information. But the last 2 points definitely were full of contradictory information. You talked about the growth of India and its economy going from 25th out of 64 to 13th out of 90. That seems to be pretty good when it comes to investment issues. And you suggest on the fourth point that it's not the feed grains that are the most important. It is basically privatization or the exit of government from some of the capital formation and the entrance of private groups that create the biggest influx of capital. And it's got less to do with how much food is available and everything to do with how much the government is mucking things up. So I thought that was pretty straightforward. Okay, thank you.